Malaysia is holding a series of state elections. We're partners at the federal level, are rivals at the ballot box.
We came together in 2022 at the federal level. But when it comes to the elections, we have two different political ideologies.
As the politicking exposed the fragility of coalition governance,
so I feel that the AP had to compromise a lot in terms of what it had claimed to be about for so long.
It has led to some distrust in politicians and political parties.
There is now speculation that the Malaysian government may not last its full term.
They will apply maximum pressure on Anwar to go for early general election so they can ride the wave.
Is Malaysia headed for snap polls? What will it mean for voters?
就是我明明是投我想要的政党，可是为什么开票过后结束，然后得到的却是这样的东西？
The state of Johor sits at Malaysia's southern tip, across the border from Singapore. It is late June, and the streets of Johor Bahru are lined with multicoloured flags, all representing the various political parties in Malaysia. The state is headed for its local elections on the 11th of July, with all 56 seats contested. Real estate agent Howard Lee is eager to cast his ballot.
政党互相竞争是良性的，对我来说是好事。与其是所谓的一党独大，你两个政党的话，我们做人民的，或者是做撒伯特的，我们就很明确看到，大家的理念是什么？大家对想要发展罗佛州给出的理念跟宣言的方向是什么？
But the Johor election has become more than just a local contest. Called early by the Barisan Nasional-led state government, BN chose to contest alone, instead of alongside its partners in the federal unity government.
The reason is very simple. The Johor government was formed before the unity government. So therefore, it's better for us to be going solo for these Johor elections.
The Johor election is the first in a series of state polls over the coming months. After Johor, Negeri Sembilan voted on August the 1st. Malacca and Sarawak are expected to follow by early 2027. Together, these elections could shape the balance within the federal unity government and influence whether an early general election will be called.
In a hypothetical situation that UMNO or Barisan Nasional does well in Johor, does well in Negeri Sembilan, does well in Malacca as well, and they feel that they have now accumulated adequate support to actually win big in a general election. There's this speculation that they may decide to pull out from the federal coalition and force early election.
These are the major players. The coalition federal government is helmed by Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. He leads the Pakatan Harapan, or PH, coalition. It primarily comprised three component parties: Parti Keadilan Rakyat, or PKR, the Democratic Action Party, or DAP, and Parti Amanah Negara, known simply as Amanah. The other major component in the federal government is the Barisan Nasional coalition, led by UMNO. In the 2022 election, no party won enough seats to form the government outright. In Malaysia, this will require 112 out of 222 parliamentary seats. Anwar's Pakatan Harapan coalition won the most seats, 82. Their rivals, the Perikatan Nasional bloc, won 73 seats. The PN coalition is made up of Parti Islam Se-Malaysia, known as PAS, and Bersatu. BN won just 30 seats, less than half the 79 it secured in 2018, and its worst election result ever. In the end, BN joined forces with PH to form a unity government. For years, the PH and BN sides were rivals.
Yeah, that was the biggest surprise, right? Because they were sworn enemies, basically, right? PKR and DAP for so long before that, against Barisan Nasional. So for them to actually come together to form a government is really, in a way, mind-boggling to people.
He really only had two choices in terms of partners on the Malaya side. He can either go with PAS, which has the largest bloc in parliament, or he can go with Barisan Nasional.
BN and its previous incarnation had ruled Malaysia for 6 decades, from 1957 to 2018. But by 2018, it had fallen out of favour with voters. Its then leader, Najib Razak, was implicated in the 1MDB scandal, a multi-billion-dollar corruption case involving the State Investment Fund. But after the 2022 elections, PH had to make a political calculus.
So it's either we take UMNO, Barisan Nasional, as a coalition partner, with the political baggage that comes along with it, but have a chance to rule and deliver some of our promises, as opposed to staying out of the government, let Barisan Nasional and Perikatan Nasional then form the new government and perhaps deliver more policies and goals that are contrary to Harapan ideals. So it is, in my view, a fairly straightforward choice. We pick the one with lesser evil.
Together with smaller parties from the Peninsula and East Malaysia, Anwar's eventual coalition had 148 MPs, giving him a 2/3 majority. He called his governing agenda Madani, a Malay term to represent a more humane, reform-minded and stable Malaysia. But while it was called a unity government, the divisions were evident.
It is very difficult to carry out, the agenda of one party in a situation where you have a partnership of 3 or 4 different coalitions. Different people have different priorities. I think the weakness has been the failure to articulate the minimum baseline compromises or reforms with respect to giving way for leaders that were accused of wrongdoing who are still leading political parties.
One of the key figures in that arrangement was Ahmad Zahid Hamidi. Zahid was UMNO president. At the time, Zahid was standing trial on 47 graft-related charges involving his charitable foundation, Yayasan Akal Budi. Anwar appointed him Deputy Prime Minister.
Pakatan Harapan was founded as supposedly this reformist coalition, those kind of anti-corruption and institutional reforms. On one hand, you're talking about cleaning up the country from corruption and whatnot. So how can someone with this amount of charges become the second most powerful person in government, basically, Deputy Prime Minister? So the optics was not good.
In September 2023, prosecutors applied to discontinue Zahid's Yayasan Akal Budi trial. The Kuala Lumpur High Court granted Zahid a discharge not amounting to an acquittal, or DNAA, meaning the 47 charges were dropped for now, but he was not fully acquitted. In January 2026, the Attorney General's chambers classified the case as no further action. But the Malaysian bar is still challenging the decision in court.
Even though Anwar tried his best to kind of explain it away, right, by saying, he doesn't interfere, this is in the court, this is yada yada, but the obstacle is already there.
Pakatan Harapan had campaigned on reform, anti-corruption and institutional change. But quickly, Prime Minister Anwar had to face the realities of coalition politics.
So in terms of the major compromises, obviously he knew that when Zahid brought in UMNO, he had to deal with this issue of Ketuanan Melayu, which is the ideology of UMNO. In English, it's Malay supremacy. The East Malaysian parties wanted a lot more money and a lot more political autonomy. He did have to make some sacrifices in terms of getting the DAP, the largest bloc in Pakatan Harapan, to step back. So they gave up a lot of their previous ministry, especially the ministries they held in 2018.
DAP received 4 full ministerial appointments. By contrast, BN received 6.
So if you want to keep the government stable and intact for at least one term, so these are the kind of compromises that we have to face.
It's very difficult for us, of course, to convince people in the past 3 years that this is exactly what reform is all about. We have never envisioned reform as an overnight shift of system, but rather a generational struggle, a long process. Dismantling the old system would take time.
The Democratic Action Party, or DAP, is one of Pakatan Harapan's key parties. For decades, it opposed UMNO. It now had to govern alongside its longtime rival.
We can see, even after they form this unity government, that UMNO members or leaders still go head-to-head with DAP leaders, right? And most of the time, those issues relate again around race, religion, identity issues. Unfortunately, if DAP speak up too much or too loudly, then they would perhaps anger the Malay base.
To be honest, DAP is to some extent in a no-win situation. In coalition politics, you don't have the absolute majority to rule, and reality is that we have to compromise. But it is necessary to be able to bring many other changes that we have already successfully put in place.
The question now is whether the federal coalition can hold together as state elections unfold in the coming months. In May, Anwar said he was prepared to call for an early election if pressure within the unity government continued. The next general election is not due until 2028.
Knowing that Sri Anwar, whenever he's being challenged, he knows that I have to stand up against these people. But he will always go back to the priorities. But let's finish what we have started. We will never stop serving the people as long as the mandate is there.
If a general election is called, will the current alliances endure? Or could Malaysia's political alignments shift once again? If an early general election is called, what will Malaysia's political landscape look like? How will parties align? The answer may depend on who they are fighting for, the voters. PKR began as a reform movement after Anwar was sacked as Deputy Prime Minister and jailed in the late 1990s. The party campaigned for cleaner government and institutional reform. It also championed a multiracial vision for Malaysia, challenging the long-standing UMNO-led system that gave preferential treatment to Malays or Bumiputra.
The people that continue to support PKR, DAP, Pakatan basically ask the urbanite Malaysians, the educated Malaysians, professionals. They still believe in the idea of, kind of merit-based, efficient government, and a lot of Pakatan supporters are perhaps frustrated because the kind of reforms doesn't come as quickly as the supporters had hoped. So I think that's why Pakatan is slowly losing some of its supporters.
PKR would see defection within its ranks. In May this year, 2 senior PKR figures, Rafizi Ramli and Nick Nazmi, announced that they would take over leadership of Bersama, a small fringe party. Both were once part of Anwar's reform movement. Now they're building a party outside his coalition.
We believe in progressive values, we believe in multiracial politics, similar to what PKR has been championing. But now we have the situation of post-election coalitions because of the hung parliament in 2022, and a lot of the ideals and the values that the party has championed had to be compromised.
Bersama made its electoral debut in Johor. It fielded 15 candidates, but did not win any seats in the state contest.
Bersama is competing for the same block of voters that may be attracted to Pakatan Harapan. I think nationally it may help Barisan Nasional and PAS to win some seats because it further fragments the pro-reform vote that would have otherwise gone to Pakatan Harapan.
Bersama will find it very difficult for them because they are basically chasing the same demography as Keadilan, but at the same time, do they have the capacity? The bigger challenge for Keadilan would be how do we convince the people that country should be like this, and a multiracial party like Keadilan is the way forward.
As for UMNO, for decades it was the dominant Malay party in Malaysia. But its fortunes had waned.
If we look at the general election in 2022 and subsequent state elections in 2023, Malay support for UMNO has dipped below 50%. And so I think UMNO needs to be in government so that they can show that the public that it's still working, it still has machinery on the ground, and it can deliver patronage and resources back to the Malaysian public.
In Johor and subsequent elections, UMNO could be competing for the same urbanite Malays that had switched to PKR.
If UMNO can present the slate of leaders that these young people, young professionals can be confident about, they will vote. And Johor is the first step.
So I think the intention is to bring leaders who can attract younger, newer Malay voters to support the party. But will it really happen? To a lot of people, particularly young Malay voters who go to work straight after high school, they're mostly working in the gig economy, working in the service or retail economy. They're very angry because incomes have to be stretched. They're voting PAS. UMNO's real competition is not Pakatan Harapan. UMNO's real competition is PAS.
In the Malay heartland, the party Islam Se-Malaysia, or PAS, remains deeply rooted. Here, the party has a 75-year-old footprint through grassroots branches, Islamic preschools and volunteers. In the northeastern state of Terengganu, PAS supporter Muhammad Abdul Hadi runs a stall selling local snacks at the city's central market.
PAS ni dia bukan parti politik semata-mata. Dia gerakan dari segi gerakan Islam ni dari segi kebajikan, pendidikan, agama, sosial, semua dia buat. Dari segi parti UMNO tu dia ada juga buat kebajikan. Cuma kita ni sokong PAS ni kerana UMNO parti dia ada berlaku penyelewengan lah dari segi pentadbiran, dari segi duit-duit rakyat.
Saya melihat bahawa kekuatan utama PAS ialah imej Islamik dan juga bersih yang telah ditonjolkan selama ini. Yang paling penting ialah tidak mempunyai sebarang skandal yang boleh mencalarkan kepercayaan rakyat.
PAS is part of the Barisan Nasional or PN coalition. At the federal level, PN is the main opposition. PAS's coalition partner is Bersatu, a Malay-based party made up of former UMNO leaders.
Back in 2022, PAS as a party is the one that provides more of the ideological base and the grassroots machine. Bersatu brings, I guess, leadership in the form of former UMNO leaders. So they actually complement each other.
But PN may not survive going into the next general election. In June 2026, PAS ended political cooperation with Bersatu, though Bersatu says it remains in PN.
Isu yang berlaku di antara PAS dan Bersatu ialah trust deficit, iaitu kepercayaan yang semakin terhakis. PAS perlu menerima realiti dan Bersatu juga perlu menerima realiti bahawa dalam pilihan raya akan datang tidak akan ada kerjasama di antara PAS dan Bersatu.
Days later, former Bersatu Deputy President Hamzah Zainuddin, sacked from the party earlier this year, unveiled Parti Wawasan Negara. PAS has since signalled support for Hamzah's new vehicle.
The leadership in PAS, they know that if they put themselves or one of them as this national leader, it will be difficult for the rest of Malaysia to stomach that. If their objective is to govern Malaysia one day, they need to reach out to non-Malays. They are playing the long game. They are aiming for the next 10 years.
PAS memerlukan satu rakan lain yang dilihat lebih mungkin agak sedikit terbuka untuk mengimbangi imej PAS di kalangan pengundi Melayu yang middle class. Kerana itulah kita sudi untuk ataupun kita sangat-sangat cenderung untuk bekerjasama dengan parti-parti seperti Wawasan yang dipimpin oleh Datuk Seri Hamzah Zainuddin, dan boleh jadi akan ada perundingan pula dengan UMNO dan Barisan Nasional.
UMNO and PAS were previously allies. PAS was part of BN in the 70s. They cooperated again in 2019 in an alliance called Muafakat Nasional, or National Concord. PAS has since looked to revive this partnership, proposing Muafakat Nasional 2.0.
Well, in Johor, there was talk about cooperation between PAS and UMNO. PAS looks at the situation and says, we'll direct our members to give support to UMNO, to Barisan Nasional in Johor. So for Negeri Sembilan, which is actually 70% Malay voters, I expect the same thing to happen. But Mr. Zahid mentioned that there is no formal cooperation deal between UMNO and PAS because there's no need, because we have a common foe, which is Pakatan Harapan.
One of the main component parties in Pakatan Harapan is DAP. In the 2022 general election, DAP won 40 seats, the largest number within the coalition. DAP describes itself as a multiracial party.
DAP support primarily relies on non-Malay voters living in urban and somewhat semi-urban constituencies in the country. They have, I think, actively tried to bring into the fold Malay leaders that are more in line with the values that the DAP espouse.
Here is the data of vote share for Pakatan Harapan by the different racial groups in Malaysia across elections. In the 2022 election, it won an estimated 94% of the Chinese vote and 83% of the Indian vote, but just 11% of the Malay vote, a sharp decline from 2018.
The basic UMNO or Barisan Nasional supporter remains very skeptical, very doubtful of DAP. They have been socialized, orientated for the last 70 years to see DAP as the other, as the more evil party. So it's very hard to actually change that in a short space of time.
Politics in Malaysia is such that if all the Malay votes are united, there is no room for minorities. So it is very easy for these parties to make DAP the bogeyman. And by tainting Anwar Ibrahim as being associated with this, then what you successfully will do is to reduce Malay support for PKR and Anwar Ibrahim, enabling votes to go to Perikatan Nasional and Barisan Nasional.
And so, this is the state of play in Malaysia. If an early general election is called, old partners could part ways, while former rivals could find themselves on the same side.
If the Malay votes are divided, let's say among UMNO, Bersatu and PAS, would this give an advantage to Pakatan Harapan? Perhaps because Pakatan is quite solid among themselves.
But beyond race and religion, bread and butter issues may also sway the votes at the next election.
In this household, we have 7 people. I have my 3 children, my husband, my mother-in-law, and the maid, and maybe 2 cats.
Malaysian households are now classified by income deciles. Broadly, these can still be understood as the bottom 40%, middle 40%, and top 20%. On paper, Liliana's household falls within the top 20%. But after food, education, transport and savings for her children, the monthly balance looks different.
I don't think salaries has increased that much, and also pegged against the cost of living, When the kids were younger, we could spend about 500 ringgit a week, but now 1,000 is normal. And not that we're seeing a lot more, so definitely, you do have to watch your budget.
According to multiple surveys, for most Malaysians, the economy has eclipsed race and politics as the country's most pressing concern.
The cost of living and the strength of the ringgit. These are the 2 things that really bother them.
The purchasing power among Malaysians generally is being affected by the high cost of living. For instance, for median household income in 2024, it's stood at about 7,017 ringgit. But if you adjust it with the consumer price index, which the real income is about 5,284 ringgit. So it means that the gap, the difference between the nominal and the real income after adjusted to CPI is around 1,700 ringgit. That's huge.
Incumbent governments often enter elections with certain advantages. They can campaign on their record and announce new policies or assistance before voters go to the polls. So what is Prime Minister Anwar's economic scorecard?
Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has focused on trying to expand the economic pie because that's the core problem. And I would say in the last 3 years, he has been very energetic in trying to expand foreign investment into Malaysia and has been very successful in the context of global economic and geopolitical uncertainty. And I think this is where the Malaysian government, particularly Anwar and his team, needs to communicate better that all of these plans take time to materialize.
Since Anwar took office in November 2022, the economy has regained momentum, growing 5.2% in 2025, before expanding 5.4% in the first quarter of 2026. Approved investments hit a record 426.7 billion Malaysian ringgit in 2025. Unemployment stood at 3% in April 2026, while the number of employed people continued to rise. The ringgit has also recovered from earlier lows, ranking among Asia's best performing currencies in 2026.
For Malaysian economy, GDP growth of more than 5% is deemed good. So from the growth point of view, I think the government did well. Of course, when we go and deep dive into the society, of course, there will be a high degree of inequalities.
Since 2022, foreign investment has flowed primarily into high-tech manufacturing, especially semiconductors and electronics, and into digital infrastructure, including AI, cloud computing, and data centers.
The country is growing by leaps and bounds, particularly in certain key sectors like semiconductors and all that. But yet, most Malaysians do not benefit from that because they're not in that sector. In the meantime, most of the middle class and the lower income classes continue to suffer from stagnant wages, prices that continue to be high, and very dependent on government to manage, cost of living through subsidies and interventions.
Another issue that could shape the next election is subsidies. Most Malaysian drivers use RON 95, the common grade of unleaded petrol. For years, the government has kept its price low through subsidies. But now, it wants to replace blanket subsidies with targeted assistance.
If you look at the studies done by IMF recently, 50% of the wealthiest household enjoy around 75% of the fuel subsidies. Because these are the people who've been driving the high-powered vehicles that essentially will consume a lot of fuel and fuel subsidies. So I think government realised that, and I think they are slowly and gradually try to target the subsidies.
The Iran conflict has added pressure to that calculation. It disrupted shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, a key route for global oil supplies. And the higher oil prices climb, the more Malaysia must spend to keep pump prices low.
In January and February, the allocation for fuel subsidy was merely around 0.8 billion ringgit per month. But come March and April, after the war erupted in Iran, that allocation shot up to between 4.7 to 4.8 billion per month. That's a huge jump. So imagine that the government will continue their current fuel subsidies mechanism with no plans to reforms, then it will deprive allocation for other critical ministries, for instance, Ministry of Education, Ministries of Health.
For delivery riders, fuel is a direct cost of work. 25-year-old Din works as a crane operator at a container port near Kuala Lumpur. After his shift, he delivers food for Grab.
Gaji 3,700, 3,000 lebih ke atas lah. Tolak-tolak komitmen 2,000 lebih. Setiap bulan 1,000. Lepas tu tak ada duit makan lah, duit makan apa untuk buat Grab lah. Satu hari pun paling banyak RM50. Itu pun tak tentu lah. Kemarin hari tu saya buat RM20.
More than 1 million Malaysians now earn income through gig work, including an estimated 370,000 food and parcel delivery riders.
Satu hari 2 kali je saya isi RM10 full tank.
So you tinggal RM10 saja lah?
Ya. Nak buat macam mana? Esok buat lagi lah. Cari lagi. Buat Grab.
Reform is extremely important among the chartering middle class, the middle class in Klang Valley, Penang and Johor. But generally speaking, for the rest of the countries, they don't really care. If you are a fisherman or farmer, worry about is how much subsidy you get from the government and how much does things cost in the Kedai Runcit.
While the economy may dominate voters' concerns, identity politics is still expected to play a significant role in campaigning.
But when you talk about identity issue, about race and religion, and you bring in emotion, anger and whatnot, it's easier to mobilize voters. And if we look at a lot of survey data, they always say cost of living issues. But when they go to vote, at the end of the day, they're going to choose a party or a politician that represents their conservative views.
Prime Minister Anwar's record on these issues will also come under scrutiny. His government has continued policies recognising the special position of Malays and indigenous communities, including Putra 35, a long-term Bumiputra economic plan launched in 2024. Funding for Islamic affairs has also risen from 1.5 billion ringgit in 2022 to 2.6 billion in 2026. Anwar has also been an outspoken supporter of Gaza, recently reaffirming Malaysia's long-standing ban on Israeli nationals entering the country.
And if I may say, Anwar has been very active in promoting Madani and its Islamic values. Outside of Malaysia, yes, he's seen as this one of the better Muslim leaders, vocal when it comes to Palestine and whatnot. But in Malaysia, it's not been that successful because regardless of all the things that he have done and tried to do continuously, he doesn't carry that ulama image that PAS does.
In a 2024 Merdeka Centre youth survey, only 57% of Malays said that they trusted Chinese Malaysians, and 53% trusted Indian Malaysians. 1/3 of Malay respondents reported having few close friends from other ethnic groups.
It is not easy for Harapan to convince the general population, especially the Malay majority, to be supportive of us. We cannot be more Malay than UMNO, we cannot be more Islam than PAS.
Conversely, Anwar's attempts to court conservative voters may backfire with his core progressive constituents.
If I take something as simple as the halal issue, that has become very divisive in Malaysia, right? And if we look at what's going on in the past few years, it's not Anwar or the government that has been behind all of this, it's actually UMNO. UMNO is part of the unity government. So why UMNO has been allowed to really emphasize these problematic issues? What has Anwar done to counter that?
What are the signs that an early election is on the cards for Malaysia? And if it comes, what will the contest look like? In the aftermath of the Johor state elections, Barisan Nasional emerged victorious. It won 48 out of 56 seats.
One of the reasons why Barisan did so well in Johor this time is they did not really face any real Malay opposition. It is quite clear that Bersatu was not able to mount a challenge because they were imploding before the election.
We had a good Menteri Besar, we had good policies. The opposition did not have any alternative leadership, and then they were too dependent on DAP.
Pakatan Harapan won the remaining 8 seats in Johor. In particular, DAP lost 11 of the 17 seats it contested. It retained 6 seats, down from the 10 it previously held.
The so-called honeymoon period between the Chinese community and DAP is really over. They were trying to send a very strong signal to DAP, saying that we are not very happy with the performance of DAP in the last 3 years in this so-called unity government because you have not been protecting or furthering the interests of the non-Malays.
Johor was the second state election loss for DAP in the last 8 months. The party was wiped out in the Sabah election last year, losing all 6 seats that they held in 2020. Some analysts and party insiders have pinned the loss on the compromises they've had to make at the federal level.
The final factor which nailed the coffin on the DAP in the Sabah state elections 2025 was their cooperation with the ruling coalition of the state, which was tarnished by allegations of corruption and wrongdoing. And because of that, voters decided to punish them.
There was a degree of neglect, perhaps by the national level, DAP, in dealing with what's happening in Sabah. We can only blame ourselves for the results in Sabah, and that gave us perhaps a very strong wake-up call to make sure that the same thing does not repeat itself in Peninsular Malaysia.
On August 1st, Negeri Sembilan became the next test after Johor. Pakatan Harapan and Barisan Nasional contested separately. Barisan Nasional, PAS, and Wawasan cooperated in seats where only one of them was standing. Together, they won 25 of the state's 36 seats, a supermajority. Pakatan Harapan won the remaining 11. Notably, Minister of Transport and DAP Secretary-General Anthony Loh lost his seat at Chennai. State elections for Malacca and Sarawak are expected to be called in the coming months. Barisan Nasional could look to capitalise on its momentum. Meanwhile, members of DAP are questioning the political cost of coalition politics. On 16th of August, DAP will table a motion in an internal meeting to stay or withdraw from positions in the unity government. The question now is whether the unity government can last its full term.
If Barisan Nasional wins big, I foresee that Barisan would put pressure on the unity government and the federal government to dissolve parliament, because again they feel confident that and they want to keep that momentum. If Pakatan doesn't perform, I doubt Anwar would feel comfortable with having an early election.
In terms of Anwar, he would want to make sure that the economy has some positive news coming up before he triggers the general election.
I think at the federal level, PH and BN work very well. But when it comes to the elections, we have two different political ideologies. Mr. Zahid has openly said that he wants the cooperation to continue until such time when Prime Minister decides to call the election. So let's see.
UMNO President Datuk Sri Zahid Ahmadi have stated that the federal cooperation will last all the way full term. My personal view is I don't believe a single word of it.
One factor may give party leaders pause when it comes to pulling support from the unity government. Since 2018, Malaysia has had 4 prime ministers. Shifting alliances and changes in parliamentary support brought down successive coalition governments, leading to the revolving door in leadership.
The churn in terms of political leadership that the country has experienced in 2018, since 2018, I think has affected the way voters view elections. Number one, it has increased the element of voter fatigue, and it has led to some distrust in politicians and political parties. But at the same time, voters do not want to go back to the instability and the lack of direction in terms of what the national government is supposed to be about.
So, any party that triggers early polls may face backlash from voters for rocking the boat.
I suspect Barisan Nasional does not want to upend the national coalition and be cast as the party that causes national instability. It already paid a heavy price in the 2022 elections because voters thought that they were a source of instability and punished them. So I think now they are playing it more carefully.
Now that I'm 50, I really don't care who's the government at the top. I don't want to have, to change out to say UMNO, who after this next term, just to undo whatever the, Anwar did before. No, there needs to be continuity.
我在马杜巴哈读书，我们在这次的大选。
所以如果是说经期大选的话，对我而言，我是觉得我是可以接受的，我是还可以接受，但是会觉得很累啊，会觉得又要去投票多一次，又要花一个时间去。但是，以政治来说，或者是整个国家大方向来讲，这也不是个坏事，因为其实对我们来说，在外面看到，从报纸上、从社交媒体上，就觉得很混乱，是希望可以在正轨上会更好一些。
Whether the current government serves out its full term or calls an early election, one thing is clear: today's allies could become tomorrow's rivals, while today's rivals could join forces tomorrow.
If Barisan and Pakatan continues in the government post-GE16, I think it's just going to be a repetition of what we've had in the past 3-4 years. So the more natural one would be PAS and UMNO. But is it the best or natural outcome for Malaysia? Then you would have Malay majority government and a non-Malay opposition. So they were split again down that racial religious line again.
It's no longer about who are you going to work with. I think the questions that will have to be answered by all the political parties post-election later on would be that you want to be the opposition or you want to be the government.
Realiti politik Malaysia pada hari ini, tidak ada satu parti yang boleh membentuk kerajaan secara solo dan sendirian. Kena ada coalition, kena ada collaboration, kena ada kerjasama. Dalam matlamat yang terbesarnya ialah menafikan Pakatan Harapan untuk menubuhkan kerajaan untuk penggalian berikutnya.
In my view, it is a given that Barisan Nasional will contest against Pakatan Harapan in the next general election. Whether another collision between the parties can happen again, perhaps it really depends on the exact outcome of the election.
PH and BN, our ideologies are very far apart. Trying to find that middle ground is very difficult. And then you have PAS on the other side of the fence, just waiting. So who do they choose? PH, who doesn't want them, or UMNO, who may be able to work together with them. So these are the political calculations that the people of Malaysia must decide upon.
For voters, that could mean the party they supported ends up governing alongside the party they voted against.
So this is the unfortunate part about Malaysian politics. You went to the ballot box already, your responsibility ends there, now it's up to the parties to figure it out.
就是我明明是投我想要的政党，我想要做的东西，可是为什么开票过后结束，然后得到的却是这样的东西？但对我们选民来讲，真的很多时候会心灰。
Perjuangan PAS berlandaskan Al-Quran dan Sunnah, bukannya berlandaskan dendam. Itu juga maksudnya kalau UMNO ni bila dia nak join bersama, bersatu, nak berubah balik apa gini, kita boleh terima, tak ada masalah.
When people stop trusting the government, they stop voting. We'll be voting in the wrong people. I do want stability. Malaysians don't care who's at the top anymore. Which party they represent, just represent us.